around it. There's more farms, I think, perhaps anyway. The area is just not as developed, I think, would be the immediate observations I would have. And there are likely other differences.
It's kind of the same thing, because you're putting all the parcels on one side of the road and leaving the other side vacant for more of your open space.
And they're doing it through a rezone and general plan amendment versus the existing zoning.
Yeah, just a question on that same board. We have the existing home site and you're creating this parcel A, and then you have B, C, and D, and then the rest of it is a remainder. But based on your zoning that you have, it shows, you said it's supposed to be A2B5, not A2B20?
I'm referring to, on the screen here, parcels B, C, and D.
It shows A2B40 on there, and that's supposed to be
A2. It's supposed to be A2B5, and that was clearly carried forward all the way as what was proposed. It's in the application. The applications are in the packet as well on whatever page there, starting on page 72 of 122. And so, yeah, it was meant to be A2B5 south of the road, and that is an error that.
Well, the question, you have 264 remaining acres on that parcel on the north side of the road that's not part of parcel A or B, C, and D, so, but it's having a zoning change to B20, so I'm not sure of the 264.
A portion of that parcel will have one zoning, and a portion of that parcel will have it.
Right, but the portion that has the B20 would actually open the door and lend itself to believe that you could probably create maybe 3 or more parcels on that remaining portion there that's not part of parcels A, B, or C, or D. So is that the intent? Did the planning commission discuss that at all?
It is in, I can't recall to what degree. There wasn't a lot of discussion. The applicants weren't there. There was no one speaking for or against at the public hearing. In the initial study, and I could find it if I looked here, but basically it is increasing the potential. It goes from a potential of I think 3 parcels to 8 parcels. So it does. It does open the door for some potential parcels north of Old Highway Road, down the road.
See, and I think this is where the parallel goes back to last week, and is we have an existing staff, an existing board, and the board and existing public giving comment, and they make an agreement or we come to a reasonable understanding, and that's probably where we were in 2002 with the Cummings property, and then we moved the clock ahead 13 years, and now you have different staff, maybe even have a couple changes in staff, changes in the board, and now they come back and they try to represent what happened then, opens up the door for now. So we're I would say if you're going to have that zoning being B20 on that remainder portion, I tell you, there'll be a board sometime in the future. It could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, who knows, but that's going to be opening the door for that. And now you have kind of an intentional development starting in this. And is this where you want to have it? I mean, it may be a good place to have a bunch of clustering of houses and leaving the rest of it as a remainder. And if you're going to do the remainder, you've got 80 acres on that, but it's 164 acres, so that theoretically could be split in half too. And if you do that, maybe if this is going to be the remainder to support this concentration of clustering down by the highway as that density transfer, then maybe the rezoning should be, that 80 should be maybe 150 or something. So it precludes that feature of breaking it up.
If I could just comment on that there's no cluster density option proposed with this project. What's proposed here is to change the zoning so that those parcels are consistent in and of themselves with that zoning of the B5, for example, south of the road. Indeed, the acreage due north of the highway would be in the zoning district that allows for 20-acre parcels. Therefore, the policy of the county would be that 20-acre parcels would be consistent with that. And so, if an applicant came in, it wouldn't be inconsistent with that zoning. It might represent some problems in terms of serial subdivisions, but in terms of the zoning, it would be consistent. parcels are appropriate in that zoning district.
If I may. You know, like I said, the ordinance was adopted in 1987, and you know, this is a graphic that kind of went along with it. Mapping technology and that sort of thing was different then. There were different capabilities, so you know, I would note that it does increase the potential. You know, there is potential for an applications down the road. However, they too are discretionary and would be back before at least the planning commission.
How far out of the Pittsville area plan is this? It's right on the outskirts, isn't it?
I think it is within the Pittsville area plan.
It is within the plan.
More questions by the board on the staff report? Seeing none, any questions from the public on the staff report? Alan?
Well, I just was noticing there's no chance for an easement from above the road to the A3 NH 80. If you're going to have two parcels of different zoning, there's no easement going to that one.
Again, it's one parcel with two zones.
So in short, replying to Mr. Schumacher, it's in common ownership. I mean, it's all one parcel currently.
Right.
This is how it would be developed. There would
Right,
be
you're
A,
still
B, and
going
C.
from 302 with
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4 different ones with obviously the plan to get 20-acre pieces in that lower section. So the plan is to get it divided somewhere down the road, right?
I can't speak to what their plan is, the applicant's plan is. I can speak to the application and the particulars of this application. Yes.
The logical time to contemplate an easement would be when those additional parcels were.
And that's the short answer, is if it were to be divided at a later time, then the person, obviously, that's acquiring one of those 20s, if you will, first wouldn't want to buy one if they couldn't get access. So they wouldn't want to close a deal that didn't have an easement as a part of it. But secondly, the seller, we would think, if that were to occur in the future, wouldn't be able to effectively market a landlocked parcel. So he'd want to include an easement for that purpose. But that would occur at that later time if it occurred.
And I would note that in Lassen County Code, Title 16, which is the subdivision ordinance, requires access. Now, we don't have a legal access requirement for existing parcels that may be developed, but for parcels that are proposed for creation, there is a requirement that there be recorded access to it.
Any more questions?
May I ask, may I ask him a question?
Yes.
When does the subdivision map act imply if you have 4 acres, 4 parcels or more?
Correct. So the owners, the property owners, had previously created a parcel there, and I think it's to the east there, so we don't show it at least on this. But because of that, because of the number of parcels that had been created under that same ownership, the way the Subdivision Map Act treats it is that it counts. So if it's 40 years later, you know, it probably wouldn't be that much later. But if it were, you know, 20 years later, even or 30 years, it still counts towards the total. And anything more than 4 parcels requires a subdivision versus a parcel map. In actuality, there's not much difference. There's some noticing requirements to the school district and the post office and you know, that sort. But really, given the sizes of the parcels that we have and where they are, practically speaking, there's really not much difference.
Don't you have 5 parcels though? When you consider the 264 acres and you got A, B, C, D? Wait, wouldn't that be a new?
I think under the Subdivision Map Act, the remainder parcel is not considered a parcel for purposes of
Correct.
I didn't write it. That's just the way it's written, and we're counting parcels. We follow their rules.
Okay. Any more questions for Gail? Madam Clerk, have we got any new correspondence?
No, sir.
Anybody in the public wish to speak in opposition of the proposed project? Anybody in the public wish to speak in favor of the proposed project? Seeing none, then we bring it back to the board. Right to the board.
It's in my district, I'm afraid to make the motion, because it won't get passed.
If you have to, I'll pass the gavel to Jim and I'll say this.
I thought he had rhinoceros skin, but obviously he doesn't.
You haven't forgot that, have you?
No.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, are we closing the public hearing?
Thank you. The public hearing is closed 11:38.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Okay, now back to the word.
I would make a motion to approve the general plan land use designation amendment and pass the ordinance to implement the rezoning and adopt the resolution conditionally approving the subdivision.
We have a second.
Second.
Wow.
Unfortunately, Jerry, you had a third on that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion by the board? Okay, Madam Clerk, would you call the board?
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor Hemphill?
Aye.
Supervisor Hammond?
Aye.
Supervisor Kyle?
Aye. Okay. Our 11:15 item, a little bit behind, recognition to U.S. Forest Service. Finally, you guys, thank you for being patient. I'm gonna let you pronounce your name,
Yeah.
Matt.
Is there a microphone?
You don't need it.
Oh, right there. Okay, there it is.
Yeah. You look funny standing on the chair.
Nice work presentation, by the way. That was great. So my name is Matt Boisseau.
And your partner there?
Yeah, this is Casey Passero. You might know her, and yeah, you all know Ann Carlson, of course, and I'm her replacement until the ranger job is filled permanently. And I'm a deputy district ranger back in my old unit in Wells, Nevada. So I live in the middle of the Great Basin, the middle of sagebrush country, and when you look to the east and the west, you wonder where does it end? It's so vast, and it ends in Susanville when you come out west. It's like, yeah, you have the sagebrush right there. It hits the ponderosa pines and the lodgepole, and there's forest. So it's really nice to be. I've been here about a month, and it's really nice to be among trees and cool weather and water and friendly people like you all. So it's a pleasure to be here.
We're glad you're here.
It's a down day.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. So yeah, so Casey's going to talk a little bit about some of the recreation activities that we have planned for the upcoming holiday and into the future. Probably talking about some of the low lake stuff, and because of the boat ramp and stuff, you might have questions about that. And we have a lot of blowdown from events that are going on, and there's some woodcutting opportunities that are open and available right now. And I'm sure Casey and I will be able to answer some of those questions. So without further ado.
Good morning, gentlemen. Glad you guys could have us here and we can share some of the most current information that we can with you about recreation for Eagle Lake Ranger District. Some of you may know, by trade, I'm range management specialist on the district, but I picked up the recreation program as well since we're real shy on recreation people. So it's been an interesting addition to my range program. So. As you all know, we had a pretty good wind event in February. Many of us had.
I know my barn went
Yeah,
down.
your barn went down. So we were concerned that in light of that we'd have a lot of damage in our recreation sites and that sort of thing throughout the forest, but particularly here on Eagle Lake. We lucked out. We really didn't have any facility damage. We no restrooms, no big facilities, anything like that were really damaged in the wind event, so I was pretty pleased with that. We had a few old restrooms that would have been nice to have been able to replace because of it, but so we did luck out in that sense. The Highway 44 campgrounds from Roxy Pecan, clear around, of course Roxy's on 36, but clear to Gomez and Bogard and Crater Lake and clear to View Creek, all had a little bit of down trees in the area, but nothing major, and at this point, we've had fire crews and some of our other folks on the district that have been helping get that cleaned up for us. So
Yesterday, Mr. Hempel and I traveled over to Bernie and back in Purdue 144. I've been out there a couple times recently. That was Jeff's first time since the event. And it was pretty amazing seeing not only the number of trees, but the size of some of those trees that are down and even snapped off like 10 or 15 feet off the ground and just like toothpicks broken. I mean, it's unbelievable.
that's what was amazing because it did. It just kind of pick and chose which ones it wanted to snap off and which ones it wanted to blow over. And throughout the district, we've got a lot of areas besides just along the highways and sort of stuff that we've got a lot of blow down that way. So I'll touch on that if you guys have some more questions on that. But as far as for the recreation end of things, we were in good shape. We had we identified hazard trees, which included ones that had been what we call root sprung. They had blown part way, but the roots had completely let loose of the soil, and so they were hanging and potential for any additional wind and that sort of thing. So we identified hazard trees, anything that was leaning into other trees, and of course the ones that actually hit the ground in our campsites. And for the Eagle Lake Recreation Area up at Eagle Lake, we counted 170 trees that were within that whole recreation area, which in some ways it sounds like a lot, and in other ways it's like, well, it could have been a whole lot more. But we've gotten those all cleaned up. We had a timber sale that we were able to move forward pretty quick in there, and Holt Logging was the bidder and the contractor on that. They moved in, and they had all those trees cleaned up, taken care of in a matter of 2 weeks, and then put them on trucks and haul them. I never did hear where they were taking them for sure, which mill. But those got cleaned up. Then our internal road crew for the Forest Service were up, and they were able to clean up the root wads. Being a range con, I figured if you cut the logs off of the end of the roots, they should just drop back into the hole, and everybody kept telling me it doesn't work that way. So we had to get rid of the root wads. The biggest concerns at Eagle Lake were was the safety for the recreationists when they come there. So you can't just leave the root wads there and the holes that are created by those when they pull the trees up. So our crew was in there. It's right after the loggers, and were able to clean up the root wads. And I don't know, I didn't watch them do it. They were supposed to get as much of the material out of them because some of those have huge rocks and that sort of things in them when they tip over. But apparently we didn't have a whole lot of fill dirt that we needed to try to use to be able to fill those holes back in with. So that was wonderful. I was worried how much we were going to have to spend on getting fill that was really free. But anyway, so that got cleaned up. Then we had some other folks that were out there helping clean up the slash, and we've got slash piled from the logs and such that when the Holt cleaned those up. And so that whole process of cleaning up the recreation area up there went really fast. I was really pleased with how well folks, once we got the sale all done and got things identified, actually we got that cleaned up. So the recreation area is ready to go for this next weekend. Scott McCullough is still running the concessionaire stand and the campgrounds, as well as the day use areas in that whole area for us this year. And he's got things up and running. He's got recreationists that are already coming in, reservations that are being filled. So hopefully that continues. The bigger concern is the low water boat ramp, and the lake did not come up this winter. I mean, every now and then it might come up a couple inches. We get a storm, and we might get a little bit, and then it drop back down. We got no new runoff to help recover that lake from last year's end of season levels.
Dr. Bateson reported about a week or so ago that he, of course, monitors those levels and looks at the historic part of it. And he indicated that the amount of water that came up, and then with the evaporation rate that will take place along with other factors in terms of how much water, given the current dynamics, unless something radical changed, and it could, that he figured that sometime by late August or 1st of September that the lake level will be at a point that it will be lower than where the lowest point was on that chart over there in terms of 1934 or 36.
Yeah, well, the new historic low.
It will become the new historic low. So that shows you just how dramatic the lack of rain has created there. Right.
And we depend on that snow pack in the wintertime to be able to come in and keep it kind of fill in and counteract that evaporation. But that is the biggest thing with Eagle Lake is the evaporation is where a lot of the moisture, the water that's in there goes to over the course of the summer. So yeah, Dr. Bateson's information is always really interesting. So at this point we'll have the boat ramp open, the low water ramp. We've had a lot of calls from starting 2 months ago, folks wondering if the ramp is going to be available for folks to use. And it is. We've got 12 and a half of the panels of the 16 that made that boat ramp are out of the water. So we've been taking measurements. We put a smaller dock in last. If any of you have been up there, we've got a fairly good-sized dock that we had used off of the Aspen ramp that floated in quite a little bit of water and was fairly high off the surface of the water. This year we've got ones that'll float in 18 inches of water, so they're out there and available for folks to be able to launch. Once they launch the boats, they can tie them at least in for a short period of time while they finish loading or getting folks on board or offload them when they come back in. So the ramp is available, the dock is there. The measurements we're getting right now is that we're going up about 2 feet of water at the bottom of the ramp, and the 100-foot dock, 36 inches at the end of the dock. We've had a lot of folks concerned, well, how come we don't dredge, or why don't we do some work that way? We have to have permission from Lahontan and Corps of Engineers and all those folks, major permits that we have to work with on that front with those guys to be able to dredge. And my concern on that front is that once you start dredging, you have to keep dredging, because the way that the lake works is, put a low spot, then sediment's going to fill it back in. And so I'm hoping that at this point, folks will be understanding that we don't want to start something that way for
The
low
wave
water.
action from the northwest is going to bring the siltation back in and fill it. And
Yes.
that's why that breakwater was initially built on the county ramp.
Yes, and you've been here
40 years
as
ago.
long as you know how that was all put together too. And yes, we would like at some point to be able to do something with the marina, but the water's going to have to come back up for us to be able to get it all prepped and usable again too. So right now, our intent is we want to keep that ramp open as long as we can. We're going to have staff, myself and my summer temporary will be out there both Saturday morning and Sunday morning to help keep the flow going as far as getting guys in there and back down the ramp, and hopefully nobody drops anything too major off the bottom of the ramp and then has to get pulled out. Somebody said they would call the tow trucks and have them up there to make some good money on Memorial Day weekend. I said, no, I don't want any tow trucks up there. We don't want to have to deal with that one. But everything will run as normally as we can have it based on the low water levels, and I hope folks will be understanding that the great big boats aren't probably going to be as likely to be able to put in this summer. The lake level right there and the lake bottom is so flat for several hundred feet or even yards before it drops off into that shelf. And so that's what we're up against right now. We just don't have a way to increase the slope for some of those bigger boats to be able to get in. So we'll leave it up to the individuals. They can determine whether their boat is going to be able to be launched safely and take care of their equipment, not cause damage to the ramp, but we'll leave it to the individual boaters to make that decision as they come up. So as the season progresses, I'm sure it's going to be worse, and hopefully they'll be happy to bring their smaller boats. The Sheriff's Department was out. They had their boat out, and were able to get buoys out for the hazards, the low water hazards. So I'm working on getting a map from them as to where those are, so we can have those posted at the ramp, so that people at least have an idea of where to be looking out for those hazards. And we'll just be up there on a constant basis, kind of keeping track of things. So Scott's got the concessionaire all open. He'll have the stores up and running, and he'll have his little cook shack to keep going, and he'll be helping us on Saturday morning too. So, any other questions for recreation at Eagle Lake?
Well, not for Eagle Lake itself, but in the Eagle Lake District and stuff. A couple of years ago, before Jerry Bird retired, he worked with, and we had developed a program where arrangement was on the Eagle Lake District for the development of the Fredonia loop trails to kind of extend what is the South Side Trail as well as the other trail developments off of his. And Ann was heavily involved in shaping that. She had a number of extra requirements, which we understand and appreciate why the Forest Service has to do that. But part of it was, the main part of it was there had to be a year in which they were able to look at the flora and fauna and examine all the environmental characteristics. And it was the proposed trails were taped off by the trail coordinator fall before last, and basically January through December last year was to be that study period, with the results of that becoming known here in the spring, and we were looking to either get a go or a no-go, or what sort of rerouting it might have to take place and whatnot. But the idea was that by 2015 we'd be in a position to start firing up or gearing up, having the crews working on actually building the trails and developing that system where appropriate. So my question is, where does that stand? Because I haven't heard any feedback along those lines, and I thought we would have had that discussion. And when the Forest Supervisor, Mr. Hayes, was here 2 weeks ago, he was going to try to look into that and get back to us on that.
Right. And I know Ann was very a good proponent of that, and a lot of the folks on the district are positive about wanting to get something like that going. Right now, where we've been working on a forest program of work, where the budget is kind of set up, and we've got high priorities. And this last year, of course, the salvage over on the Hat Creek district pulled a lot of our Eagle Lake folks that direction, and we're just now wrapping that whole analysis and everything up. The Fredonia Trail. I know that there's been some of the specialists were out and were able to do some of their surveys. I don't know to what degree, how much of it is still needed to be done. The botany, so it's kind of on, it's kind of still, it's on the list, but it's not one of our top priority ones for specialists if they get a chance to get out there and do some of it.
My understanding is there's some work, obviously, that only the certain people on the forest could do, but a lot of the work was actually going to be done by contract folks, and actually a lot of the staff work that would be just done on by routine staff was actually going to be handled by the county staff. And when it came to the actual building of it, it wasn't something that was going to necessarily be built by the forest. It would be built by using the county crews and the partnership between the BLM, the Forest Service, and the county to get that accomplished. So it's not like it's dependent upon basically an in-house staff work.
Right. I think the biggest thing at this point has been the folks that need to do some of their reports as far as based on their surveys, the botany end of it, maybe the wildlife. I'm not, like I say, I'm not sure exactly who's working on it. I know the archaeologist had been working with stuff, and I know he's gotten some things done. But their time frames have been having to work on some of this other stuff and try to fit this. So I'm not sure what the timing is on it right now.
The answers were still not there.
Yes.
I'd like to have, we could have maybe a focused agenda item here in the next few weeks to actually define for us where the missing pieces are, where the accomplishments have been made, and what is the ETA, instead of this having this be kind of a nebulous thing, because this started like almost 2 years ago now. It was I think in August of 2013, and the 2014 time cycle is the critical part to get most of this stuff done. So a lot of that work, theoretically, was supposed to be, would have been done, or could have been done, or should have been done prior to even the fires hitting and all the distractions. I understand what you had since then, but how do we wrap that up, and what does it take to get it wrapped up so that we can have a definitive answer? Because I think the community has been watching carefully. There have been fundraising going on, and the county has got budgetary priorities to put funds into hopefully the completion of this extension. So.
Okay. I'll probably have to just pass it on to Dave and let him know that this is the sort of thing you guys are looking for, and have him schedule when we'd be able to get you on.
We've already kind of talked to him about it. And I thought part of your reason for being here today was to kind of give us an update.
Oh, yeah, no, he didn't say anything about Fredonia itself, but yeah, at this point, I'm sorry, we were focusing more on the Memorial Day and trying to get that out and prep for the season.
Harry, you have a question?
Yeah, I know it's not recreation, but your premier occupation is range. And I'm just curious on how the water situation is holding up for the committees on their various allotments. Are they going to be able to use their full season this year, or what's it looking like?
Well, we're doing the same way as we did last year in the sense that, we'll get you guys out. If they've got water, surprisingly this year, some of those water holes are in locations, we got water in water holes that we normally would have, whereas last year had been kind of different. We had water in places that we wouldn't have typically expected and not water in the usual places. This year is a little bit more normal in that sense, in that we've got water in places that we normally would. It's just, it'll be a matter of how long it lasts, because some of those may be dependent on staying a little bit full based on groundwater from runoff and then from snowpack. And so the guys are all going out. They've reduced numbers of their own plan for themselves as far as what they think their allotments in their areas will be able to handle. And actually we've got 2 out of my 3 big operators have got livestock on the forest already. And we were trying to get them out early so that they could make use of the water that is there as long as the vegetation was ready. And all the vegetation is probably about a month ahead of season, a typical timing. Grasses that are already heading out that normally we wouldn't have even seen starting to do that. So yes, we are getting folks out. They've reduced numbers greatly in an attempt to be able to maybe stay longer than they would if they were at higher numbers. And we're just going to stay with them throughout the season, checking conditions, whether they're meeting standards and whether it's time to move into that next pasture. Most all these guys have all got rotation systems, so they go into an early season and then move through it as the season progresses. And so we're hoping that we'll be able to keep them out as long as we can. September always gets to be kind of that iffy time frame as far as if we start losing water and the livestock start focusing on the riparian areas, then we have to kind of be a little careful on things.
And on the last, just out of curiosity, how many vacant allotments are there?
We've got, off the top of my head, we've got some that we've identified as vacant through the Rescission Act schedule stuff, where we had all these, we had to do the environmental analysis. They're identified as vacant because there's other issues, or nobody's been on there, or we've got recreation overlaps, they're not suitable range anymore, that type of a thing. I can't give you an exact number off the top of my head. For the Lassen, on the district, I have maybe 4 that were identified as either vacant or closed, and a couple of those, 3 of them at least, have been identified as closed because we had, the permit was given back to us in the early 2000s, and there were, at that time, we were pushing to get the active allotments, the ones that had permittees who had permits that we needed to get the environmental analysis done with, get those guys taken care of and done, versus going back to one that didn't have any grazing going on at
So
the
we
time.
anticipate getting those back online.
Not through with all the other guys yet. And some of them we may not because of other things that they don't make them a suitable, manageable allotment. For instance, up not Fredonia, but well, it's our Fredonia allotment, but it's up there by Roxy Pecan and such. There's a lot of the recreation, a lot of timber, not a lot of good open range land for them, and so those are areas that we anticipate we can do the analysis on them, but we anticipate that there's probably going to be a location that isn't as suitable for managing livestock as it maybe was in the past.
Well,
So
that could be one of your safety areas, so if you do have a fire somewhere, that could be an alternate deal.
absolutely, we've got some that would be better than that one possibly, but yes,
I would
we've got
really
that.
like to see a lot of progress and effort made to get those reopened, because the Secure Rural Schools Act, we've only got 2 more years, and we're looking at going back to the actual timber receipts.
Right.
And,
They're waiting.
yeah, we're gonna need that. And
Yeah.
so, the more you guys can push on that to get ahead of the curve, so that they're
Yeah.
coming online when this goes vacant, we're gonna be way better off. So.
Right. And right now we've got on Eagle Lake, well, and I do range on both Eagle Lake and Hat Creek, so I do both districts. Right now we've got a good set of permittees that have got a good set of allotments. None of them, very few of them have just one allotment. Most of them have several, and they rotate through them and have management options that way. And so we're trying to make sure we keep those guys taken care of, and then we'll be able to roll into the ones that we've identified as, in a sense, lower priority because we don't have an active permit on them right now. So, yeah. But as far as the range part of it goes, we're working to make sure these guys get out this summer, and most all of them, they're all great. They work with me really well, so I don't anticipate any problems. We'll just have to keep an eye on what conditions do and how they change.
Any more questions?
Range recreation.
Be done. Well, thank you guys very much for coming.
Thank you. You guys give us a holler if there anytime if something else comes up.
Welcome, Mark.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Welcome to you.
Yeah, we're glad to have Matt on board.